Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. And our New York Mets have, boy oh boy, have they gotten hit by a bus over the last month. But the June swoon is hopefully finally over. Mets came away with a big win last night, a much needed win. I hate saying must win, but last night was probably a must win for the Mets, and they get the job done in a split of the doubleheader. And we're going to dive right into it, talking about their struggles, talking about how they're going to get out of it, what are some solutions, and kind of just what the general vibe is with the team. Now, first things first, if any of you listening to this, do not listen to anyone on Mets Twitter with their opinions. I don't know if people are being satire or they genuinely feel the way they do. But I saw so many Mets fans after Mendy pulled Clay Holmes yesterday calling for Mendy to be fired. It just absolutely blew my mind. Mendy led this team to the NLCS last year when it was supposed to be a punt year. They're 10 to 12 games over 500 over this as overall over this stretch. They're still in that 10 to 12 games over 500. And they're only, despite how awful the last month has been, they're only 2 games entering tonight, 2 games out of first place in the NL East, and currently hold a playoff spot as a wild card. I mean, I guess if there's a positive in this stretch, this is the positive, is that the Mets are still in a playoff spot, and despite giving the Phillies every opportunity to run away with the division, they just won't. I don't understand what firing Mendy is going to do. I think that is a horrible idea. I think that's a horrible take. I hope those people aren't being sincere about it. Would I have liked Clay Holmes to pitch a little more in the sixth yesterday? Yes, but I do understand. You have to understand the other side of it. Clay Holmes is converting full-time from a reliever to a starter. He's already passed his innings limit or innings threshold that he set last year. He's going to cruise by it by the end of the season. And I think, he's been very good this year for the Mets. He's had 2 starts where he's given up 4 earned runs. Every other start has been 3 earned runs or less. Yes, I know he's only going 5 or 6 innings. But, I mean, he's been at an old reliable automatic right now where I know if Clay Holmes coming, we're going to get 5, maybe 6 innings, 3 runs. 5 to 6 innings, 3 runs. Almost every single time. And you know what? 6 innings and 3 runs is a quality start. And if he's throwing out a quality start almost every single time he's going out there, he's given the Mets a chance to win. And given this, looking at this offense and what it was supposed to be, if the Mets starters are only allowing 2 or 3 runs each time, they're in a position to win. It's on the offense to actually score. A lot of people criticize the pitching over getting swept by the Pirates, which is fair because the pitching was atrocious. But the offense also didn't do anything, especially in that last game they had 2 hits the whole game. You can't win doing that. You can't expect the starting staff to sustain how good they were at the start of the year throughout the whole year. Everyone knew there was going to be some sort of regression at some point, and boy oh boy has the bullpen fallen off a cliff with the regression. But you knew it was going to happen, and then injuries come up. The horrible injury to Griffin Canning, the injury to Senga, even though he'll be back this year, Canning won't. Manaea got hurt at the start of the year, but is going to be back within a week or so. Montas got hurt and has been back for 2 starts. Was good his first start, was awful his second start. Blackburn came back from injury and was okay against the Dodgers, and then just has not been good. Injuries and regression in the bullpen. I mean, the bullpen with Brazoban and Reed Garrett. Brazoban and Reed Garrett, I think, have just been simply overworked. And that's not anyone's fault, per se. Like, it's not Mendy's fault that the bullpen's overworked. It's the fault of the starters' inability to go more than 5 or 6 innings. Now, Holmes, I give a slight pass to because that is a hard transition to make from becoming a full-time reliever where your body is used to going out and throwing 3 outs, sometimes 4, to now you have to stretch it out to 15 to 20 outs. That's going to take some time. By the end of the year, I'm not going to be worried about Clay Holmes. I think eventually they're going to push him into the late in the 6th, maybe into the 7th if he's pitching well enough. I understand right now conserving him because we saw last year with Severino, Manaya, Quintana, all these guys, the workload they had during the regular season caught up to them, and they just ran out of gas in the postseason. And I think Mendy is kind of babying them a little bit, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think he is babying them a little bit where he doesn't want them to run out of gas come Game 6 of the NLCS. They want to be able to have their guys ready to go to be able to take on the Dodgers or the Phillies or the Cubs when you have a potential trip to the World Series on the line. So I don't know where this fire Mendy stuff came from. I understand a lot of people are frustrated with Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes, who are the hitting coaches for the Mets. I get that frustration. But from that standpoint, I'm only going to touch on it briefly. Look at a guy like Lindor. Look at a guy like Pete, Soto, Nimmo. Guys have been around a while. How much benefit are they really getting from a hitting coach? If you really think about it. Like, Francisco Lindor's been in the league for 10 years. He's going to go down as one of the greatest shortstops of all time. If he doesn't know how to hit at this point, I don't really know what. It's kind of like, what are you going to do at this point? I don't think firing, I know it's a reactionary response to people being frustrated that the team is not playing well, but I don't think firing everyone is going to be how you solve the problems of this team going forward. Good teams need to be humbled by an awful stretch, and the Mets have certainly been that. Last night in Game 2 of the doubleheader, they looked like the Mets. They looked like the Mets we saw the first 2 months of the season. They were, Nimmo with the grand slam, Lindor back-to-back after Mendy switched him in the lineup. The bullpen was good. Tidwell was good out of the bullpen. Last night showed that they're there. And I think last night, that Nimmo grand slam, if the team needed a hit like that, it was Nimmo's grand slam last night. And I think that is what's going to help bring this team, give them a little mojo back, and hopefully they can finish strong heading into the All-Star break, because you have the last game with the Brewers tonight, then round 2 of the Subway Series this weekend, and then next week at Baltimore, at Kansas City to close out the first half. So you're playing, well, I know Kansas City and Baltimore have underperformed, but if they play to their capability, you have a tough stretch entering the All-Star break. So if the Mets can get a little bit of as much mojo as the Mets can get, what helps them? The Yankees have also sucked over the month of June. The Royals and Orioles are not playing well or to expectations this year. So that works in the Mets' favor. The idea that, the giving up on the season and sell off everyone and fire everyone, I think is just a reactionary response to Mets fans being frustrated. And don't get me wrong, I'm frustrated too. It sucks watching them lose 13 of 16. That's not whether you're the Rockies or you're the Dodgers. That's never fun to watch your team lose 13 of 16 games. But you have to also look at the big picture, where somehow, some way, despite losing 13 of 16, the Mets are only 2 games out of the division. They're still in a wild card spot. And they're 10 to 12. They've been hovering around 10 to 12 games over 500 over this stretch. Overall, their overall record, they're 10 to 12 games over. So I'm far from pressing the panic button, but something needs to be fixed before it gets to a point where maybe the Phillies rattle off 8 of 10 and things spiral out of control. The solution, the Mets are going to need pitching. I've said it a million times on this podcast. I've said it on TikTok videos. The Mets are going to need pitching. Now, whether they want to handle that internally or externally, Sandy Alcantara has been a name that has been floated around. There, Zach Gallen, if the Diamondbacks decide to sell, could be an option. I don't know. The problem is I don't know how much pitching is going to be available and at what cost, and what are the Mets going to be willing to bring up, which is where I kind of lead internally. Do you wait it out for Manaea to come back? Do you see how long until Senga's back or Tyler McGill comes back? In the minors, you have Noel McLean, who's been pitching great. You have Brandon Sproat, who's been pitching great, who started the year slow but has started to turn it around and pitch good. You have Jonah Tong in Double-A, who I think it's too early for him, but I guess if the Mets were desperate, that could be an option. So you do have internal options. Blade Tidwell, he came up and was not good his debut, then was all right his second time out, and then last night he was good. Tidwell could be an option. Maybe it's just he had to get, I don't know, maybe get the nerves out of him his first couple outings, and now that he's settled in, he feels more confident. So it's a matter of, are the Mets going to be willing to, if they decide to handle it pitching externally, the bullpen's going to be the big one. That needs to be addressed, in my opinion. That is a big, you cannot keep doing this cycle of just bringing guys up for a day or two at a time, sending them back down, and then bringing up fresh arms. That can't be sustainable. They're going to have to get multiple arms in the bullpen. But from a starting rotation standpoint, externally, who's available, and are you willing to give up what you spent just 2 years ago replenishing your entire farm system to build a strong foundation? Are you willing to part with a lot of those guys? Or if any of those guys, and what guys are you, who's in that mix of who you're willing to trade, who you're not willing to trade? If you handle it internally, I think McLean and Sproat are two great options. I do think it may be a little early for McLean, and I say that because he's this has been his breakout year. Same with Jonah Tong. It's both of their breakout years. I think I'd like to see them down a little bit longer. I think if Jonah Tong goes up to AAA by the end of this year and maybe is in the conversation for a back-end spot next year, I wouldn't be against that. Noel McLean, I think if he might be a late season call-up. But right now, what we've seen already, I think the first person they should call up is Brandon Sproat. I know he's had an up and down year this year. He started slow, but his last couple starts have been good. He's starting to get his mojo back a little bit. I think Sproat is a very realistic option for this team. And I'm not saying that if it's him or McLean or Jonah Tong, if any of those three come up, I'm not saying they're going to be saviors for this team. But I do think that having them come up is going to be a huge help, just from the sake of we need something, because Montas, I'm not ready to pull the plug on him yet because it's only been 2 starts, and Mets fans in general just did not like that move. I didn't mind it, but the Mets fans in general did not like that move from the start. And Paul Blackburn I don't like bad-mouthing players, but Paul Blackburn has just been awful. Outside of his season debut against the Dodgers where he was solid, he has not been good the entire time this season. And like I said, I don't like bad-mouthing players, but you have to be honest at some point where the Paul Blackburn's just not working out. At the time, it was a great move, and it's just, if the Mets weren't as injured as they are in the starting rotation, I don't think Blackburn would be in the rotation. I think he'd be the long man out of the bullpen. But that's going to be an issue that the Mets are going to have to deal with come the trade deadline, is what are they going to do with starting pitching, and what are they going to do in the bullpen, and what are they going to do with who they are willing to get rid of, who's untouchable from a prospect standpoint. Are there guys on the big league roster that they're willing to trade? I know we have a clog in the middle infield because no one's touching shortstop for a long time. So between second and third base, you have Mauricio, Vientos, McNeil, Beatty, Acuna. It's just a giant mush in there right now. So are the Mets going to be willing to part with some of those guys to try and get some help in the pitching world? Offensively, 1-4, you have, I don't mind the lineup change, but you have Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, Pete. And I'm gonna throw in 1-5. I'm gonna go add McNeil in there because McNeil has been criminally underrated this year for how well he's been playing. No, he's not batting champion, batting .330 Jeff McNeil, but he's been playing very good since he came back from injury. So 1-5, I think the Mets are set with Lindor, Nimmo, Pete, Soto, and McNeil. No matter what order you want to put those 5 in, I don't mind that. I like that 1-5. 6-9, it is a giant question mark right now. Long term, it's supposed to be Alvy catching. He's been playing much better in AAA. He's got 3 straight games with a home run, and his batting stance has changed a little bit. So you like to think that when he comes back, that will come with him. Beatty he's on pace for nearly a 20 homer season. It's just he's been inconsistent. Same with Vientos. I know Vientos just came back from injury, so I'm willing to give him a little bit of a grace period to get going again. But how long. I'm not saying 2024 was not a fluke for Mark Vientos. I do think Mark Vientos is a 20 to 30 home run guy for this team long term. And I do like Brett Beatty a lot. Brett Beatty has, if I had to give a most improved from their debut over the last few seasons, I give it to Brett Beatty, and it's not even close. How much defensively he's improved, his offense, I know he's been inconsistent, but just how much in general he's improved since he's come up. I do like Beatty a lot, but a lot of people think he might be the odd man out of that middle infield group. That's something we'll have to look at. And catching, it's just a matter of when Alvy gets right. And then the other part is center field. Center field has been a big question mark. I understand, but I disagree, but I also agree at the same time. Tyrone Taylor. So if you notice lately, Tyrone Taylor has not been getting many reps. They've been doing a lot of Beatty at second, McNeil in center field, because McNeil's been hitting, and he's played a fine center field. Tyrone Taylor has just not produced offensively. And he's had a couple moments. He's been kind of the over-reliable of an offense. If the Mets need a late inning rally starter or something like that, Tyrone Taylor is usually that guy. But it just hasn't come together really this year offensively. Defensively, he's a wizard out in center field. And I'm okay with sacrificing a little bit of offense to have a awesome defender in center field. If you look at back in the early 2010s Mets, Juan Lagares was out there almost every single day. Juan Lagares was not a hitter. He was not known for his offense. He was known as he could fly, and he was a wizard out in center field. And that's where I think Tyrone Taylor falls into that category. He's not known for his bat. He can hit, but that's not his staple. His staple is he can run fast, and he plays great defense. Some names that have been floated around are Jarren Duran, Cedric Mullins, Byron Buxton. Duran, and I just don't see the Red Sox trading. They're still in it. And I would say the same with Buxton. I don't think... A lot of people have said that the Mets have checked in on Buxton, but are the Twins going to be willing to trade Byron Buxton? I mean, when he's healthy, he is one of the most electric players in the game. The problem has been him being healthy. The Twins paid him. They're only 4 games out of a wild card spot. I would be shocked if the Twins traded him, but if the Mets traded for him, I don't think I would like what that's going to cost. Because I think that's going to cost an arm and a leg from the Mets farm system and maybe some guys from the major league roster. Cedric Mullins, I think, is the most realistic. It feels like since the Orioles season hit rock bottom when they were firing Brandon Hyde, that the Mets and Cedric Mullins has been the most talked about. I don't think the Orioles are going to have as high of an asking price as the Red Sox would have for Jarren Duran or the Twins would have for Byron Buxton. But I do see that as a potential fit. It's just a matter of, we go back to the pitching. It's just a matter of what are the Mets going to be willing to part with? What are they going from the major league roster, from the minor league roster? What is too much? Who's untouchable? And who's realistic? David Stearns may have to be forced a little bit to work outside of his comfort zone. And that's okay. And if the Mets are going to be active at the trade deadline, it's just a matter of what do they prioritize, which in my opinion should be the bullpen, starting rotation, and then offensively, center field. But I do think that the gap between the pitching and center field is a lot. I think that their heavy focus needs to be on this pitching come trade deadline time, and then center field is kind of like a bonus prize, if you will. But the Mets are struggling, but it's not, I mean, it feels like the sky is falling. I'm not going to act like I haven't felt the same way. But I do think the Mets are going to be fine. If they win this series, they win 2 out of 3 against the Yankees this weekend. And if they can just keep winning series, that's kind of the MO. If they can go into the All-Star break winning, let me think here, threes. If they go in the All-Star break winning 6 or 7 of 10, just for the sake of a number, and get some positive momentum going into the All-Star break, I feel very good about that if I'm the Mets. I do think they are going to be an interesting team to watch come the trade deadline, just for what they're going to, how all in are they going to go? Do they see 2025 as this is World Series or bust? Or do they say, we're there, but we don't want to give up too much, so we're going to do some minor bandages around the edges and see what we can do? It's just going to be an interesting trade deadline time for the Mets. Now, that all sounded very ranty, but I don't think you can be, I've said it a million times, I'm beating a dead horse. You can be frustrated with the way the Mets have played over the last month, but not think the season, and also not think the season's over. I've been very frustrated watching the Mets lately. Do I think the season's over? No. Do I think the Mets are still in play for the NL East and the pennant? Absolutely. Not if they play like this, obviously, but I do think this team is in a great position to win and win now. They're going to need some fixes, and I would rather have this stretch happen in June where we know what the problems are, we know what we have to fix before the trade deadline, before September when it's too late. Would you rather have the Mets playing like this now? Or would you rather have a repeat of 2022 where they collapsed the final weeks of the regular season, where they lost to the White Sox, they lost to Atlanta in Atlanta when they only needed to win one game? I would take this every single time. But like I said, that was a little ranty, but let's talk about the rest of Major League Baseball. Last night, Clayton Kershaw became the 20th member of the 3,000 strikeout club. I stayed up to watch the game. I'm not going to talk ill of Clayton Kershaw. I am, but he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. In my opinion, he should be a unanimous Hall of Famer, but I also thought Ichiro should be unanimous, and he fell 1 vote short. Clayton Kershaw, when you look at his career resume, the only thing he needed left was 3,000 strikeouts. He's got a Cy Young. He's got an MVP. He's got a ring. Now he's got 3,000 strikeouts. Only the 4th lefty in the 3,000 strikeout club, and I believe he's the 5th to do all 3,000 with one team. But if you watched last night, or if you've watched Clayton Kershaw this year in general, he doesn't have it anymore. Father Time is knocking very hard on the door of Clayton Kershaw's career, and it sucks because I grew up watching him and Verlander and Scherzer and Greinke. When you look at the previous generation, where it was Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, and Pedro, this generation, and you could throw Schilling in there and Randy Johnson. When you look at this generation's group is Greinke, Verlander, Scherzer, Kershaw. I know Greinke's probably, in terms of overall career, Greinke's probably number 4 between those 3 guys, and I think it's between Verlander and Kershaw for 1 and 2. But I mean, I've said it before. I think the 3 of them, Kershaw, Verlander, and Scherzer, are kind of in an unspoken ego battle with each other over who can last the longest. But I mean, it was very clear last night that Kershaw does not have much left, and that's okay. He has nothing left to prove. He has done everything a starting pitcher can do. He has punched his way to Cooperstown. He has a World Series ring, 3,000 strikeouts. He's got multiple Cy Youngs. He's got an MVP. He has done it all. He has nothing left to prove. Right now, him and Scherzer and Verlander, all 3 of them have nothing left to prove. Now it's just a matter of how long can I go? And I do think all 3 of them know that the end is near, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I just hope they don't go overboard, where I don't think this would happen, but I hope they don't go to the point where when you're talking about 20 years from now, you're talking about Clayton Kershaw's legacy, that you're talking how rough his last year or 2 was, as opposed to how awesome his whole career was. I just hope, as baseball fans, we never get to that point. And I don't think we will, but I just really hope we never get to that point as baseball fans. And then the only other thing I wanted to touch on today, a little bit longer episode, the All-Star Game starters were announced. So we're going to run through them kind of quickly and see our preliminary thoughts. So we're going to start with the American League. Behind the plate is Cal Raleigh. DHing is Ryan O'Hearn. The infield consists of Vladdy, Gleyber Torres, Jacob Wilson, and Jose Ramirez. And then the outfield consists of Judge, Javi Baez, and Riley Green. I think the one, I made a TikTok video this morning about it, the one goof, not even goof, but the one like question mark is Javi Baez in center field. I did not have that on my 2025 bingo card. But I think this lineup, I know a lot of people are going to complain about first base with Jonathan Aranda from the Rays not getting in. But I think outside of maybe Javi in center field and Ryan O'Hearn in the DH spot, I think this is the correct lineup. I don't have much else to add to it. I think this is the correct lineup. And I think the National League is pretty much the correct lineup too. Will Smith catching, Ohtani DH in infield of Freeman, Ketel Marte, Lindor, Machado, and then the outfield of PCA, Tucker, and Ronald Acuna Jr. Lindor finally gets his first All-Star nod as a Met, and he's starting at shortstop as he should have been. I would have thrown a big hissy fit if he wasn't starting the All-Star game. Acuna made sense because I know Soto made a late push, but given it's in Atlanta, I'm not surprised that Ronald Acuna Jr. is starting. I mean, it kind of I'm surprised they didn't just give it to him. It kind of just made it, you knew it was going to happen. But the only gripe, not even gripe, on the National League side was Freddie Freeman over Pete Alonso. And stat-wise, Pete Alonso has a significantly better argument than Freddie Freeman. But I do understand why. I mean, Freddie Freeman's more of a premier first baseman. I think Pete and Freddie are at that same caliber of value. But if you ask most baseball fans if they had to choose their franchise first baseman between Freeman and Pete, I think majority of baseball fans that aren't Mets fans, I think majority of them are going to take Freddie Freeman. So I wasn't too surprised by that, but I do think that Pete could have made a bigger argument. I do think Pete's going to be an All-Star as a reserve along with Soto, and I think the Mets will get some pitching, whether it's Holmes and Peterson, or if I think Diaz is in that conversation, and I don't know how much they're going to look into the start of the season versus lately with Brazoban and Garrett. But Lindor, Soto, Pete, I think are locks, and then I think the Mets will get one or two pitchers in there as well. So that'll be good. Once the reserves are announced and the pitchers and who's starting, we'll dive a little bit more into that. We're going to do one more podcast episode next week for the first half, kind of a first half wrap up around the league, preview to the All-Star game, and then a second half preview episode with those 2 days off for the All-Star break. But that's going to wrap it up for this week of Raise the Apple. Make sure you subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe, like button. If you're following on TikTok or Twitter, make sure you follow. Lots of great content coming there. Thank you so much for the support and tuning in for this week's episode. We will see you next week. Let's go Mets.